This episode, 10 mistakes that are ruining your power tool batteries. All right, folks, batteries are critical to our operations, and we decided we would give you some actual tips and tricks on how to run batteries and how to get the maximum life out of your batteries. Welcome to the Handyman Pros Radio Show, home improvement and maintenance tips from the pros. How to get the maximum life out of your batteries. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Handyman Pros Radio Show, where our goal is to help save you time, money, and aggravation on your home maintenance and repair. Do you like that one, Johnny?
I do. It's got a lot of like your energy, dude.
That's because I wired myself up to the batteries. Anyway, this edition's entitled 10 Mistakes That Are Ruining Your Power Tool Batteries. And you've heard my ever cheerful co-host, Nobody Johnny. Johnny, anything exciting going on this week, Johnny?
No. Well, I should wait a minute. I shouldn't say that. You know, it's you're using the word exciting. So if I have to think back on that, probably not. But you know, like I was telling you before, you know, I went out and I looked at some lumber. You know, just not lumber. Let's just say that it was that lattice. I couldn't believe how expensive that stuff has gotten.
Oh yeah.
It's just a 1/4 inch stuff.
Yep.
It was like $1.30 13 a foot.
Yeah, for lattice, just the
for
strip.
Lattice. Now I know some of you guys out there
panel.
that might be listening. You know, you're like, I can buy that stuff. You know, well, I don't buy a lot of it, so I'm not going to run over to a specialty place. You know, but you know, just going down to the big box store because I got a project for somebody that you know, for these pictures, these great big posters.
Yep.
And I got to modify the frame on it and stuff. So that was it. So I said, I can't afford that. But I ripped.
Johnny went in the millworks business, folks.
Oh my God. You know, so I just ripped down some 2x4s. And like I was telling you, the hardest part about it was to try to find straight, nice 2x4s without too many knots in them, just because, you know.
Good luck.
Yeah. I mean, if I was going to build with the 2x4s, that's one thing, but I was going to rip these down and use them for a frame. So yeah. I found them. I found 3 of them, searching through the whole pile, and none of them fell on my head. You know how that goes if you're over at Lowe's or Home Depot, you know, those damn things, the way they got them stacked up. But anyways, yeah, so that was, I did that, and
Well, that's pretty exciting.
Primed them and painted them. And yeah.
Let's get task on hand. Before we get started, folks, if you please would like and subscribe, it really helps everybody get out there and it gets our word out and blah, 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 and so forth and so on. We really appreciate it. If you do have any questions or comments, just send us an email, questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. We appreciate that too as well. So, all right. So batteries, Johnny, batteries. Now, John, I have to open this statement. If you don't know this and you're new to the show, John and I are old remote control guys. We've been blowing up batteries for longer than most people have been alive. And I say that half in jest and half not in jest. We've been dealing with lithium powered batteries for how many years now, John? 15, 20?
Probably.
Yeah, something like that. We go back long. We deal with a different kind of chemistry than what we use in our power tool batteries, but they're highly volatile and they are a lot of, you know, interesting things. And I know,
if you've ever seen some of those nice videos of Tesla's burning, you'll understand.
It's not even a joke.
Yeah,
I wish I could say it was a joke. But anyway, we go back long enough when chargers didn't have protection circuits in them and stuff like that, you know. So we've got some knowledge, and it's not that it's things to worry about, but there are just some things that you've got to understand. So number one, Johnny, is what do we call it? Life cycles, right?
Yeah.
And batteries have a termination date.
Yeah, they do. And everybody that's had a cell phone out there, you know that.
It's correct. And how, in a broad overview, how do you reduce the number of times you do a life cycle in a battery, John?
Treat it nice.
Yeah, don't charge it all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's what the show is going to be about, is treating your batteries nice.
Yeah,
basically. Try to milk out as much as you can out of them.
Yeah,
because they'll finally retire themselves. But
they retire themselves.
Yeah.
They have, just to give you the broad overview, about 300 to 500 charge cycles will kill your battery. And if you've had a cell phone and you charge it every day, you'll find out it lasts about 2 years, right? Which is
Yep.
300 to 500 days, and so anyway, so that's one of the things. So overcharging, right? Basically overcharging, meaning not overcharging with voltage. We'll talk about that too, but overcharging with numbers of actual life cycles. So that's tip number one, is don't let them run down until they need to be charged. And some of the other tips are going to be reasons on how to not run them down. So we'll get to those as well. We will talk, well, I'm going to talk about it right now. There's also overcharging by voltage, right, John?
Mm-hmm.
And it depends on which battery system you're using, but your cell phone is different battery than your power tools in general. Most of the power tools that I see run between 18 and 24 volts, just as a rough rule of thumb. But there still are, the first tools I had were 12 volt, right?
That's
John,
right.
did you ever have a 12 volt?
Yeah. They were old NiCad batteries in there.
Yeah, and they were 12 volt batteries. And so, today most everything is in the 18 volt range, and that's based on cell chemistry and on number of cells. And you don't need to we're not going to get into
we don't need to get into all
that,
but
there's one more cell in an 18 volt battery than there is in a 12 volt battery. And then there's one more cell in what, a 28 volts or something? I can't remember. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. But that's why those batteries fall where they fall. It's the cell count, so it's the number of cells. And
so just in a nutshell, what they've done, folks, is they've protected all of us laymen out here with these chargers.
Yes.
So that you can't really screw these things up in that term anymore, like that.
Correct.
But
you can, but
you can, but we certainly can abuse them. And if you don't know about those batteries, and most of us now out here are pretty aware of this topic we're talking about because of cell phones. But to get into it further with the drills, I mean, your cell phone isn't used like your drills and saws and stuff like that.
Correct.
So
that's why we talk about it. So for any battery system, heat is the enemy. Okay. So batteries do not like to get exposed to extreme heat. And also that also means internal heat as well. And internal heat comes from, I'm going to call it overuse. Like when you use your tools a lot, and if you're like us, I mean, John, you've used your tools and I have too, when they get so hot, they actually don't work anymore. Right.
Yeah. There's a thermal protection in there.
Correct. But it's not good for the batteries to let them get that hot.
No, and that's why they put that thermal protection in there, so it protects the battery, and it also doesn't let you screw it up to the point where it's going to start on fire.
Well, and they put the safety protections in there for that reason too.
And it won't charge. It won't charge if it's hot.
Right. And they won't charge if they're hot. And so we want to, you have to have that understanding, particularly in hot weather, right? I mean, it is about ambient temperature. When it's hot out, they're going to get hotter, and it degrades the battery's ability. So just try to keep it cool. I know it's like we live in the South. Trust me, in the summertime, it's impossible, but I will say this: don't leave it sitting in the sun. Put it in the shade. As simple as that sounds, it makes a difference, right? It makes a difference. So it's just kind of being heads up on some of this stuff. And to John's point, they won't charge. Let them cool. And another good tip is after you use your tool, if the battery feels warm, let it cool off a little. Just let it sit there and cool before you drop it on the charger. I know sometimes you can't do that, but I get it, but try to. Do not use the wrong charger. And this only if you have multiple battery sources, meaning are you using multiple different types of battery packs? Like there still are 12 volt batteries out there for people. You don't want to put a 12 volt battery on an 18 volt charger, even if it fits, folks. Because it fits is not the reason. You put that on there, you're going to have an issue. And hopefully the machine itself is going to shut it down and not allow you to charge it, but that's not a guarantee. So you want to make sure that you're matching, voltages to voltages and also types to types. So don't be cute and try to put your lithium powered batteries on your car charger. it doesn't go very well because they're different chemistries and they work on different voltages. And you don't need, I'm not, again, I don't want to get in, but use the right charger. We're just going to leave it at that. Does that make sense, John?
Absolutely, it does.
Yeah. Yeah. This has to do with storing batteries. So there's two issues when you store a battery. One is you store them dead. Okay, meaning you've let the power run completely out of them and then you store them. And when we're talking about storage, we're talking about long-term storage. So say you're not going to use it for a year or something like that. Long-term storage. Don't store a dead battery. It will not come back is what will end up happening.
Yeah, that is a key point. Now, I'm not sure about, when these batteries run down, the ones that we have and these modern batteries for the power tools, they might have a protection that they'll only go to, voltage and then turn off.
Right.
But remember the days when we had those LiPo batteries that if they got under a certain voltage, you weren't bringing them back.
You weren't bringing them back.
So,
and it's still, even though the protections are there, it's not a full guarantee, so you don't want to store them dead. Now, at the same time, you don't want to store them fully charged either because you have a fire hazard and you have a few other things that can go on with them. And so you want to store them at between 60 and 80%. That's why when you buy a battery, and John, you know this, if you buy a battery, it's got juice in it.
Yeah.
It's just, if you look at it, it's not fully charged.
Right.
So it's about 60 to 80%. That's where they ship them at in that range. They ship them from 60 to 80%. That's the optimum for storage. So if you're trying to if you're going to store them for a long time, I'm not talking about if you use it every day. If you use it every day, that's not going to be a big deal. If you store it charged or you store it discharged, but I will tell you, you shouldn't leave them discharged for too long. Just because, it's just a better habit to put some juice in them, kind of thing, as far as I'm concerned. So, because I've all of these tips, I've not done them at times and lost batteries as a result.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I did the same thing, and I've noticed a couple of batteries that, let's just say that I've abused.
Weak. Yeah, they get weak.
They get weak, and it's and I kick myself for that because I know better.
Yes. Right. I mean, I'm sitting here kind of shrugging my shoulders saying yes.
And they're expensive. And they're
expensive.
Let's face it. I mean, this topic here is going to save you money and some aggravation when you think about this. It's easy to go out and get batteries, but they're expensive.
Well, that and the last thing you want to do is have this is one of my favorites. You're up on the ladder, you climb up the ladder, you go to put it in and you hit the juice and it puts one screw in and you've got 12 to run and your battery dies.
Yeah.
You're like, dang it. It's like, oh, you're killing me. Anyway, so you want it's just, this is just helping you save time, money, and aggravation. It's really what this is about. Again, we're looking at 300 to 500 life cycles, which is really a lot of life cycles for most people. It just really is. But they can go long stretches, of being stored and still be good, but just don't leave them full. That's all. This is another one. And this tip, I have actually realized this myself, but do not leave your batteries in your tools, even if it's just overnight. Don't leave. There is like they call it, there's vampire power in your house, but it's the same thing in batteries. If you leave your batteries in the tools, they do drain down. Now it's very, very slow, but they do drain down. One of my favorite things, John, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I leave I've left a battery on a tool and I'll be driving down the road and I'll hear,
I was just going to say, what's happened to me is the same thing. So I'll put it in its neutral position.
Yep.
And I'll have the battery in there. Yep. But if you bump the trigger, the light comes on.
Yep.
So here I am, and I don't hear this. So now I'm okay. I'm really thinking now. I'm going to put this thing in the neutral position, not forward, not reverse, whatever. And I'm driving around. Well, this it's bumping all the time, and the light's on.
Yep.
And
you get there, you go to use it, and it's like there's
exactly. I used it, and it like you said, I probably put in like 5 screws. and then the thing died, and I was like, wait a minute, I just charged this thing.
Yep.
I said, so then it's like, did I really charge this, or is this battery really going, or
right.
Then I found out, what had happened. I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, probably because you walked out of your truck at night and you noticed the lights on in the back. You're like, what's that light? Kind of thing.
Well, exactly.
Yeah. Mine is I leave like particular some of my I started pulling batteries out as a result of this. This is actually why I started pulling batteries out, because I'd be driving down the road. I always like to leave a battery in my blower for whatever reason. I really don't know, but I now have started taking them out. But I'd be driving down the road, and I'd hear the blower kick up. What the heck, And so anyway, long story short, I now do pull the batteries out, and it's just kind of one of those things that I was tired of the blower coming on, driving around and making an annoying noise, and it's not a big deal, but it wasn't dangerous or anything like that. It just was running. So take the batteries out. Every little bit, again, this goes back to life cycle. Even if you do a slow vampire drain on it and you have to charge the battery, every charge cycle you can save, you're saving the battery. That's at the end of the day, that's what the goal of this is. So try that.
Yeah. On the other, just to follow on with that, there's no magic bullet to bring some of these batteries back.
Right.
I mean, you can go on YouTube, you can look all you want. I mean, if somebody's got the silver bullet, I don't, I haven't seen it.
If they do, send us an email, because we'd like to
send us an email.
Honestly,
that's a good way to put it. That's because I surely, haven't found it. And once these batteries go bad, they degrade. It's just a natural thing with these things now.
They're pretty shot. In our RC world, they puff. The batteries actually puff up a little bit. And you're like, oh yeah, these bad boys are getting ready to explode. They don't really explode, but they spontaneously combust.
I've had that done.
They make a beautiful fireball.
I don't know if you were. Yeah, they do.
So anyway, I have two really common sense ones, and I know I shouldn't have to say these, but I'm going to anyway. Don't get them wet. Don't let the two contacts get wet. Do not immerse them in water. They are not water immersible. Right. And same thing with metal. Don't let metal touch the contacts together, because you're going to have a very unpleasant little surprise. Yeah. And one of the other, kind of things to think about is discharge rate on these batteries. And if you get a dead short in these things, you can weld with these batteries. They'll burn things. Yeah,
some of them are pretty stout for the amps coming out of them.
Correct. So, and I have yet to have one actually arc on a.
I haven't had any problem with these batteries, these commercial batteries like this.
But boy, I think about it a lot.
That's because of our battery, the backgrounds we have using these things, because that's always on my mind too. Is a lipo issue, a lithium polymer issue. That's these things are about to take off on you.
Yeah.
I mean, what was it that we had to dispose of those things? What, in salt water or something?
In salt water, and discharge them and put them in salt water. Yeah, actually get them to do it. Lithium responds to oxygen. It actually ignites when it touches oxygen. Yeah. So there's the people that used to drive nails through them, which was exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Greg Ledford, we love you, baby.
Well, that's a good point. So all you folks out there, if you don't know why these Teslas and these electric car batteries are so dangerous, is because what Larry just said is lithium reacts to oxygen. And that's what's happening in these things. Yeah. So if you get in an accident and you get that lithium to get exposed,
meaning the cell gets punctured. Yeah, that's usually what happens.
Yeah, then you've got an issue like burning car that you can't put out.
Yeah, and not to get off on a tangent, but this has brought airplanes down. This is why you're not supposed to ship lithium batteries. They burn really hot, like I think think lithium burns at about 4,000 degrees. It's hot.
Yeah, you can't extinguish it.
No, it's a chemical fire. So if
And
you don't
it's
have a C, it's called a C grade fire extinguisher, which is for a little tiny one that you buy in your house is about $400. Last
yeah,
time I looked, you won't put them out. And when I say they burn hot, this was a lithium polymer, but the ones you're using in your power tools are lithium ion, so it's slightly different. But I had a lithium polymer actually set my concrete on fire. It set concrete on fire, folks. It's not a lie. It set the concrete on fire. I had to put the concrete out. That I did with water. But when it burned, it burned hot.
yeah, those,
Hot,
yeah,
hot, hot. So that's why these cars go up. And like in the case of a Tesla, if it's an aluminum body car, aluminum sets on fire around 2,500 degrees, and you'll actually start to burn the cars down. So you've seen tractor trailer boxes in the back. If you haven't, they'll catch on fire. They're aluminum and they're burning at 2,500 degrees. That's why they have a tough time putting those out too, because aluminum burns as a chemical fire as well, and it's hot and it burns hot. So anyway, we're not trying to scare you. That's not something to be scared of, because in most cases
well,
don't.
these are lithium ion batteries, so they're relatively the safe cousin.
They're much safer than what we're talking about.
Yeah. So it's not a big deal. But just back to if don't abuse them. I mean, it's just
keep them dry, keep them away from metal. Right? It's electric.
Yep,
folks. It's electricity. Guess what? One other thing is, and we alluded to this before, but do give when your tools are hot, particularly when it's hot outside, give your tools a break. Let them heat up and cool down. Let them cool down, because the more you run them when they're hot, the less they work. Well. Another thing is,
it's the same old story, right? It's the same old story. The enemy of electronics is heat.
Yes.
So do with that as you will.
one other, this is something that just came to me as another tip, but it has to do with, it's a similar situation. If you're using saws, keep your saw blades sharp, because if your saw blades are not sharp, the tool works a lot harder. And I noticed this when I was using my circular saw that I changed the blade on. Like, it was all of a sudden, it was like a hot knife through butter on a 2x4, where before it was a bit of push. I had to kind of push on it to get it to do it. And so that's another, that's a tip that allows you to actually for using in a saw, will help you extend your battery life. Again, here's another one. This is wrong battery in the wrong tool. If it fits, it doesn't mean it's right. Now, this is only if you're using this. Like, for example, I'm going to give an example. I'm not picking on these people, but Milwaukee has 12-volt tools and 18-volt tools, and the batteries will fit on either or. And so you don't want to put an 18-volt battery on a 12-volt tool. You can put a 12-volt battery on an 18-volt tool, but the tool will not run at the same speed, and you'll kind of be going like, what the heck's wrong with that? So just be aware that, make sure you're matching voltages. I don't think you're going to have too much of a problem with that, but be aware that some tool brands do have batteries that are interchangeable. So, and then I guess my last thing was what I already said about metal. Don't let them dead short. Anything we're missing, Johnny? Anything else we're thinking about?
No,
that'll help extend the life?
No, I think it's just common. It really does come down to a little bit of common sense too. You feel the battery's getting hot, back off on them, because you're going to intrude on their life cycle, on their lifespan, I should say.
Yeah, I want to touch on one. I just mentioned it because it just came to me, but I want to mention saw blades again, just because. So the two tools that I've noticed the most of when they get really hot for me is when I'm using a reciprocating saw, particularly when I'm doing demolition. And you need to change your blades a lot when you're doing demolition. If you're cutting particularly screws, they're harder than nails, like if you're taking windows and stuff out, or whatever you're doing. But I find reciprocating saws really heat my tools up a lot. And also my oscillating saw tends to, if I'm using dull blades, which they get dull pretty darn quick. And it's just cognitive awareness. Just kind of be aware, and because if it's not cutting right, it's just putting more pressure on the tool, which push more pressure on the battery. So that's the only other thing I wanted to say. Got any other ads, John?
Nope, Larry, I don't. You covered it all.
Thanks, buddy.
But I just did change my saw blade on my table saw after we talked about that the other day.
And big change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
since I hadn't changed that thing in years.
Since the Carter administration.
Speaking of Jimmy.
Speaking of Jimmy. Anyway, Johnny, that the last time that the aliens picked me up, they told me they were changing the batteries on their tools when they picked you up the next time. I'm just saying,
Oh yeah.
I'm just
keep them charged, baby.
Keep them charged. They said they were charging you up with them. That's all I can say. Anyway. All right, folks, if you enjoy the Handyman Pros Radio Show, please like and subscribe. We certainly appreciate it. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, questions at Handyman Pros Radio Show, you can also hit us on the YouTube channel. Just leave it in the comments or on the podcast as well. Just leave things in the comments. We're out there on Facebook also. If you want to get a hold of us, it's Handyman Pros. There's a whole group that we just do stuff. I posted some stuff lately, John. You should go out there and take a look at it.
Did look at that.
You did look at that.
I
awesome.
did.
All right. With that, Johnny, take us home, baby.
All right, folks. Have a great week. Watch those batteries. Get the most you can out of them. We'll see you next time on the Handyman Pros Radio Show.